China and the U.S. are embroiled in an AI race. Just last week, President Donald Trump announced Stargate, a joint venture involving a $500 billion investment by global tech giants in AI infrastructure.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser-focused on competing to win.
Okay, so everyone's buzzing about this DeepSeek AI, right? It seems like it's everywhere you look online.
Yeah, and everyone's trying to figure out just what it all means,
That's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today.
Right on.
We've got a whole pile of articles here, news clips, tech analysis videos, investor calls, all about DeepSeek.
Sounds like we've got our work cut out for us.
We do. But hopefully by the end of this, we can answer a few big questions, like what exactly makes this DeepSeek so different from all the other AI stuff we've been seeing lately?
Yeah, good question.
And what are the real-world effects going to be? Not just the hype, but the actual changes it could cause.
Right.
And maybe the most important question is, why should anyone even care about this? Even if they're not, a programmer or a tech expert.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think a lot of folks are feeling kind of overwhelmed by all this AI stuff.
Exactly. So let's try to make sense of it all, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first things first. This DeepSeek thing seemingly came out of nowhere, right?
It really did. I mean, one day nobody had even heard of it, and the next day, bam, it's like the #1 free app on the App Store.
Even beating out ChatGPT in downloads.
Which is really saying something.
It's crazy. It's like it went viral overnight.
And it's not just hype either. It actually can do all this amazing stuff.
That's right.
Like, all the sources we've seen show that it can have these really in-depth conversations. It can solve some pretty complex math problems. It can even write code.
Yeah, and not just like basic code either.
Yeah, it's like on par with, or maybe even better than all the other AI programs out there. And these were developed by, companies like Google and OpenAI and all these massive companies.
Okay, exactly.
And it's funny because when I was reading through all this stuff, I actually came across this clip of Mark Andreessen.
Oh, wow.
The venture capitalist.
Yeah.
The legendary tech investor.
Right.
He actually called DeepSeek one of the most amazing breakthroughs he's ever seen.
Wow. That's high praise coming from him. Right. And he's seen a lot. He's been around for a while. He was an early investor in Netscape and Facebook and all these big companies.
So when he gets excited about something, people listen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just that DeepSeek is, good at what it does. It's how they did it. Like the efficiency is just mind-blowing.
It really is. I mean, you look at the sources, right?
Yeah.
They all say that DeepSeek was developed for something like $6 million.
$6 million.
Which sounds like a lot, but
It's nothing.
It's peanuts. Compared to what companies like OpenAI and Google are spending, they're pouring billions into this stuff. Billions with a B.
It's unbelievable. I mean, that's not just cutting costs. It's like a totally different game.
Yeah, it's like rewriting the rules entirely.
So how do they do it? What's the secret sauce?
Well, from what I've gathered, DeepSeek uses some seriously clever algorithms.
Yeah.
They're not just throwing raw computing power at the problem.
Oh, interesting.
Like a lot of their competitors are.
So it's more about brains than brawn.
Exactly. There's all this talk about something called mixture of experts and multi-token prediction.
Yeah, I saw those phrases too, to be honest. I kind of skimmed over them.
It does sound a little intimidating, yeah.
A little bit.
But the ideas behind them are actually pretty elegant when you break it down.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So this mixture of experts thing basically means that DeepSeek uses like a network of smaller specialized AIs that kind of work together.
Okay.
So instead of having one giant AI that tries to do everything, they have all these little experts that only activate when needed.
So it's like a team of specialists instead of just one, generalist.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's what makes it so efficient.
Yeah, I can see that.
And the multi-token prediction approach.
What about that?
Well, this one helps DeepSeek process information in chunks. Kind of like reading phrases instead of individual words.
Oh, so it's like speed reading for AI.
Exactly.
Good.
That's a great way to put it. And that makes it much faster than these traditional methods.
So it's faster, cheaper, and just as capable as the competition.
Right.
Well, no wonder everyone in the tech world is kind of freaking out.
Yeah, there's definitely some panic setting in. I mean, even NVIDIA, the company that makes all those expensive graphics cards that a lot of AI runs on, their stock took a massive hit.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Like, what was it, $600 billion?
Almost, yeah, something like that, in a single day.
That's insane. That's more than the entire GDP of a lot of countries.
It's a huge deal.
That's like a real earthquake.
It is. And even if you don't own stock in NVIDIA, this matters because it shows that the whole tech landscape could be shifting. Like, if DeepSeek can do all this with relatively low-cost hardware,
Right.
what happens to all those companies that have bet big on the expensive stuff? Investors are having to rethink everything.
It's like everyone's trying to figure out what the new rules are.
Exactly.
Some people are even comparing this whole thing to the, what was it, the Sputnik moment?
Yeah, I've seen that comparison too.
You know, back when Russia launched the first satellite.
Right.
And the U.S. suddenly realized they were behind.
Yeah, it's like that feeling of being caught off guard.
Exactly. And it really challenges that narrative that, you know, the U.S. is the one who's always ahead in technology.
It does. Like, I remember reading all these articles a few years ago saying how China couldn't innovate.
Right. And now
they're turning the whole AI world upside down. It's like when they landed that rover on the far side of the moon.
oh, yeah. That was incredible. Nobody else has done that. Not even the U.S.
It's a pretty clear sign that they're serious about pushing the boundaries.
No kidding. And then you have this whole open source thing, right? That's a big difference.
Huge. DeepSeek's code is out there for anyone to use and modify.
Which is totally different from how most American AI is developed.
Right. It's all very hush-hush proprietary.
So what are the implications of that, this whole open source thing?
Well, a lot of the sources talk about some pretty big potential benefits, like faster innovation, lower costs,
That makes sense.
and wider access for individuals and smaller organizations that don't have, billions of dollars to throw around.
Yeah, it's like democratizing AI,
Right.
putting it in the hands of the people.
Exactly.
That's pretty powerful when you think about it.
It is. It raises a really interesting question, though. Could this open approach actually be more effective in the long run
Interesting.
than all the secrecy that you see from a lot of the big tech companies?
Yeah, because those companies are all competing with each other.
Right.
They don't want to share their secrets.
Exactly. So it's really a fascinating experiment to watch unfold.
It is. It is. But of course, there's always a but, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we got to talk about the elephant in the room here.
Yeah.
DeepSeek's Chinese.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the sources are pointing out that it avoids any topic that's even remotely politically sensitive.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind.
And there's this one source, this one article that really stood out to me. They mentioned that even if you self-host DeepSeek, like if you're running it on your own computer, it's still censored.
Wow.
I thought that was a pretty crazy detail,
Yeah.
especially for our more technically minded listeners out there.
Yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Like, how do you reconcile that?
Right.
This idea of open source with,
Yeah.
this level of control.
Exactly. It's a real tension between these two ideas.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, does this censorship ultimately limit DeepSeek's potential? Can true openness and, government influence really coexist?
Yeah.
That's something we need to think about.
Absolutely.
It's worth exploring further.
It is.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've talked about how DeepSeek is like this huge technological leap
Right.
and how it's shaking up the tech industry and maybe even the whole balance of global power.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there.
But what about the human element here?
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking about. Like, what does this all mean for people's everyday lives?
Right, exactly. Because it's easy to get caught up in all the algorithms and processing power and all this, tech jargon.
It's true, but the real story is about how AI affects people, like real communities, our everyday lives.
Exactly. We can't lose sight of that.
It's not just about avoiding certain words, It's like DeepSeek's whole way of thinking is shaped by, well, you know where it's coming from.
Yeah, it's Chinese. We get it. But what do you mean its way of thinking?
Okay, so the sources show that its answers often reflect the same worldview as the Chinese Communist Party, their ideology,
Okay, so give me an example.
All right, so if you ask it about Taiwan, like what it thinks Taiwan's status is, boom, instantly it hits you with that one China principle.
Oh, so no room for debate.
Not really, no. It's not like it lays out different sides or anything, which, that tells you something right there.
It does, it does.
Like, it's not just what DeepSeek says, it's also what it doesn't say, you know?
Right.
There were a couple of sources that actually showed this happening. Like, one was a YouTuber. He asks DeepSeek straight up, what about Taiwan's independence?
Bold move.
Right. And the AI, no hesitation, just flat out says Taiwan's part of China, period. No analysis, nothing.
Wow.
So, yeah, it makes you wonder if it's being used to push a certain agenda.
I mean, it's a powerful tool, right, for shaping how people think.
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually a much bigger concern that keeps coming up, not just with DeepSeek, but AI in general.
Like
This whole idea of AI being used to control information, to influence what people believe.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's not just a China thing either, right? I mean, we've got our own worries here in the West.
Oh, totally. All those algorithms on social media, targeted ads, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Makes you feel like, I don't know, information's a battlefield now.
Yeah, and AI is like this weapon. It's kind of scary when you think about it.
It is. So I guess the takeaway here is we can't just focus on the cool stuff DeepSeek can do.
Nope.
Got to remember where it comes from and how it could be used.
Absolutely. That's crucial. Like the fact that it might be a propaganda tool, we can't just ignore that.
It's not all fun and games.
Right. We got to be critical. Think about the impact this could have on, on people's freedom, on global conversations.
Because if everyone's just getting fed the same information or like a very controlled version of reality.
That's dangerous.
Exactly. Some of these sources, they actually compare this to like the nuclear arms race.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I saw a few of those too. It's a pretty intense comparison.
It is. So what are they getting at with that?
Well, the idea is DeepSeek is so cheap to develop, right? And it's open source.
So anyone could potentially copy it.
Exactly. So the sources are saying, it's like, imagine if every country suddenly had access to nukes.
Oh, okay, I get it. That's unsettling.
Yeah. Back in the Cold War, it was scary because only a few powerful countries had them. Now with AI, it could be way more widespread.
And way harder to control.
Exactly. Which obviously leads to a ton of questions, right?
Oh, a ton.
Ethical questions, geopolitical stuff. Like, who gets to have this power? Should it be regulated?
And what if it gets into the wrong hands?
Right. That's the big fear. The sources are calling it an AI arms race where every country is scrambling to get the most advanced AI.
Which, like, historically speaking, doesn't usually end well. Lots of tension, conflict.
Yeah, it's a valid concern for sure. And this is something that experts have been warning about for a while now. Like, the problem is AI is developing so fast.
But there's not enough cooperation between countries.
Exactly. And there aren't clear rules about what's okay and what isn't. So yeah, it's kind of a recipe for disaster. Lots of mistrust, competition, things could escalate really quickly.
It's a lot to take in. Reading all these articles, there's this real sense of urgency. Like, we're at a tipping point, Some even say we're seeing the start of the singularity.
The singularity, huh? That's a big one.
That whole idea that AI will become smarter than humans and, like, wake up.
Yeah, science fiction stuff, but also kind of terrifying.
Totally. And we're not there yet, obviously.
No.
But the stuff DeepSeek can do, especially how it can learn and even, like, reflect on itself.
Yeah, that's definitely pushing things in a new direction. And feeding those anxieties, it's a lot to process, all this stuff about AI, global politics, and the potential for things to change drastically.
Yes, it is.
And it just underlines how important it is to stay informed.
Right.
Like, we can't just bury our heads in the sand and hope it all sorts itself out. This is the future we're creating, whether we like it or not.
That's a good point. So, okay, we talked about how DeepSeek is this challenge to, like, America's dominance in tech.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, for decades, it's been the U.S. calling the shots, especially with software and AI.
Right. But now DeepSeek comes along, and it's backed by the Chinese government, their resources, their ambitions.
It's a direct threat, yeah. And one source pointed out something really interesting. They were talking about how China has all these highly educated engineers and scientists.
Yeah, they've been investing a lot in education.
Right, huge investments. And it's not just about cheap labor anymore. They're focused on innovation.
Like cutting-edge research and development.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a lot of big picture stuff.
Okay.
But let's bring it back down to earth for a second.
Okay, yeah.
What does this all mean for the average person? Like someone listening who might not be, a programmer or a tech CEO.
Right. Well, basically, we're entering this era of massive technological change. And AI is going to be a part of pretty much every aspect of our lives.
That's a pretty big statement.
It's true, though. Think about it. The jobs we do, how we interact with the world, even how we understand what it means to be human.
That's deep.
All of that's being reshaped by AI, and DeepSeek just proves that things are moving way faster than anyone expected. And with China potentially leading the charge, well, that's going to have a huge impact on how this all plays out.
Yeah, and a lot of these sources, they're not exactly optimistic. They talk about how the U.S. is falling behind in this AI race.
Some are pretty doom and gloom, yeah.
And the fact that DeepSeek's open source, well, that could give China a massive advantage, right?
It could, yeah. Look, I don't want to get all alarmist here.
Sure.
But it's important to be realistic about the challenges, right? Like, If the U.S. wants to stay competitive, they need to step up their game.
Invest more in education and research.
Exactly.
Develop a strategy, figure out how to navigate this new landscape.
It's almost like we're at this crossroads,
Yeah, I see that.
Two very different paths for AI are emerging.
Right. So, like, on the one hand, you've got the American model, which is mostly driven by private companies.
Focused on profit, lots of secrecy.
And then on the other hand, you have DeepSeek.
State-backed, open source. Their stated goal is this long-term social value. At least that's what they say.
Right, right. So it's like two completely different philosophies.
And they're clashing, and it's going to be really interesting to see which one ultimately wins out.
It is, because the stakes are high. Like, this isn't just about who makes the best AI. It's about who shapes the future of technology, the global economy, even society as a whole.
It really is. And the story is just getting started. We're all writing it together, whether we realize it or not. There's a lot to unpack here, for sure. But maybe it's time to shift gears a bit.
Yeah, good idea. We've been talking a lot about the big picture, all this geopolitical stuff. But what about the human side of all this?
Right,
It's
exactly.
like we've been talking about AI as if it's this big, scary monster,
It's easy to do that when you're looking at the algorithms and all the processing power and the global competition and all that.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, it's really about people, right?
it is. Yeah.
How AI affects people,
Yeah,
communities, our everyday lives.
exactly. It's so easy to get lost in the tech stuff.
It is.
But we can't forget that this is all about, how it shapes our lives,
Yeah.
our relationships, how we see ourselves even.
And some of the sources hinted at some really big changes that could be coming. Like, imagine AI that can personalize education.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
So learning becomes more accessible and engaging for everyone.
that would be amazing.
Right. Or AI assistants that can take care of all those boring everyday tasks so we have more time for, creative stuff.
Yeah, yeah. More time for things that actually matter.
Right. Like connecting with people, spending time with loved ones, pursuing our passions.
It's almost like AI could actually help us be more human.
That's a really good way to put it. Like it could free us up to focus on what really makes us human.
And that often gets lost in all this talk about, robots taking over the world and all that.
It does. We got to remember, AI is a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. It's up to us.
Us humans, yeah.
Exactly. To guide its development and make sure it's used to benefit humanity.
And this whole open source thing with DeepSeek, that could be a good thing, right?
It could be. Some of the sources talked about that, how it could lead to a more collaborative approach, more democratic.
So not just a few big companies controlling everything.
Right. Imagine individuals and communities coming together to shape AI to meet their specific needs.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Like, what if you had local communities using AI to solve their own problems?
Yeah. Yeah. What would that even look like?
I don't know, but that's the exciting part. Maybe they use it to improve healthcare access or to find sustainable solutions for their environment. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
It's like AI could help us create a more equitable and sustainable world.
It could, but it all depends on us having these tough conversations
Right.
about the values that should guide AI development. We need to make sure it reflects our humanity, our commitment to justice, and, our respect for each other.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of this deep dive.
We are.
And I think it's worth circling back to that question we asked at the beginning. Why should you care about this? Even if you're not, a techie.
I think the big takeaway is this. AI isn't something to be afraid of. It's not something to ignore either.
Yeah.
It's powerful, yeah, but it's also a tool. And we have a responsibility to engage with it, to have these conversations, make sure it aligns with our values and helps us create the kind of future we want to see.
Okay, so big picture, what have we learned today?
Well, we've gone deep on DeepSeek, right? From the technical details of how it works to the global implications of its emergence. But I think the most important thing to remember is this. This isn't just about technology. It's about us. It's about what it means to be human in a world that's changing faster than ever before.
That's a good point. So what do we want our listeners to do now that we've kind of, blown their minds a little bit?
Yeah. Keep exploring. Go back to the sources. Dive deeper. Talk to your friends and family about this. Challenge yourselves to think critically about AI and the role it's going to play in your lives, in the world.
Because this is just the beginning, right? This conversation is just getting started.
Exactly.
And the future is, well, it's not set in stone. We all have a part in shaping it.
That's actually a great quote. I read that in one of the articles. They said, the most important question isn't what will AI do to us, it's what will we do with AI?
I love that. We get to decide. We have the power.
We do. We do. Okay, well, this has been a pretty wild ride. A fascinating deep dive into the world of DeepSeek.
It has been.
Hopefully you learned something new, maybe got a little inspired, and most importantly, we hope you'll keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring. And remember, the future is what we make it.